Greetings, YouTube. I've spoken about before how I don't really like the whole OSR, old school revival, old school whatever rule sets. The concept that the rules that were first postulated back in the 70s were the best and the greatest, with that simplicity, with these thin little volumes that had everything you needed in them, and you didn't need any other rules, and you would just, ruling, not rules, full school of thought. Um, I'm more of a medium structure kind of guy, like Pathfinder First Edition, as opposed to some of the complexities that are thrown at you, say in Hero. Yeah, I know the core of Hero is not overly complex, but there are lots of rules and additions in Hero that are. Okay, um, and one of the things I've noticed recently, because I have read Pathfinder Second Edition, I talked about that one. I have read Fifth Edition D&D. I haven't talked about that one in detail, but I have been picking it apart through a number of videos. And one of the things I noticed right off the bat is that they really hopped on the bandwagon, both of them, that smaller is better than bigger. Because in 3.5 and in P1, the range of, or third edition in general, the range of bonuses that were commonly accepted was +1 to +5. Now, we had +1 to +5 back in first edition. So that range is, in fact, old school. And don't tell me it isn't. But I have noticed that a lot of people that like the old school thing like the numbers to be smaller. So they prefer the range of 1 to 3. They think that the bonuses of +5 or +4 or +5 somehow are out of bounds. They're somehow taking it too far, even though we had them in first edition D&D. They were the absolute, meat and potatoes of our world. But now, taking that real-time experience through a lens of nostalgia, I guess, they have convinced themselves somehow that the ranges of smaller are better, like 1 to 3 is superior to like 1 to 5. And bonuses need to be smaller. You need to have it needs to be tougher. It needs to be more austere. You need to adhere to more rigid rule structures, like rolling 3d6 for your stats, and you play them in order. That's the character you get. And real gamers with an R and a capital R and a capital G can play anything, and there's a very adversarial structure between the GM and between the players. That seems to be how a lot of folks are looking at the OSR frame now, and they seem to think it was how we all played back in the day. But I was there. I am living proof that you can survive that era and move on to the present. And my experience, and again, my experience, was a chaotic mess. Old school was wacky and wild, with 26th level rangers who had psionic powers and blasters and a part ownership in a space station, who rode a Pegasi that had been cybernetically enhanced. Okay, that it was wild and wacky and completely chaotic, where people would come back from the dead on a regular basis. It was like you get a punch card, and every 10 deaths you get a prize or something. It was radically inconsistent gaming mechanics that made no sense. And like negative armor classes as opposed to positive armor classes, and one type of mechanism if you were trying to pick a lock, as another type of mechanism if you're going to do an attack with a bow or a melee round. And if you were a ranger in AD&D First Edition, you got a +1 bonus for every level you had against giants. So if you're playing a 26th level character and you had 3 attacks or 4 attacks in a round, you were killing a giant every single round. It was absolute madness. It wasn't this tight little structure that I see a lot of folks in the OSR movement and in P2 and 5th edition seem to be putting forward, because both P2 and 5th edition are kind of harkening back to those stripped down old school rules, which were just absolute bloody chaos. And I'm thankful that both P2 and 5th edition, even if I have no interest in them, are at least more well structured. And they do have things in them I like. Seriously, there are components from both P2 and 5th edition I would gladly put into to a P1 game. Fly skill? Get the hell out of here. If you're in a form that can fly or using a spell can fly, it's as easy as walking. Done. Need to do something really weird when you're flying? Roll an acrobatics check. Just like you do if you were on two legs and you wanted to jump a chasm. It's an acrobatics check. All right, you don't have to roll to climb the stairs. You shouldn't have to make a roll to fly across a room. Okay, yeah, get rid of the fly skill. Great idea. So there are things in both P2 and 5th edition that I think were very well done. The stat blocks in 5th edition are wonderfully streamlined. They're lacking key information, in my opinion, but they're wonderfully streamlined. I'll give them that. But it seems that the nostalgia for the old school games, at least in my experience, absolute subjective experience, don't actually reflect what we were doing. It was madness. It made no sense. But at the time, it's what we had. It's what we did. It is all we knew. But now, we've had 40 years of evolution. And we can look back and decide, yeah, we'd like to play that madness again. Cool. Or, yeah, we don't have any interest in that madness. That madness was something that we did when we were kids, and I don't want to be involved in that anymore. There's lots of physical things I don't want to do anymore at 57 that I did when I was 14. There are lots of physical things I can't do at 57 that I could do at 14. All right? Times change. But I remember the stupid physical things I did at 14, and I can tell people now, maybe you don't want to do those stupid physical things because they were dangerous and they weren't healthy. But I did them, and I survived, sometimes with scars, but I don't want to do them now. And I don't want to play those old games because I remember how they actually played, and sometimes the people that are pushing old school rules have forgotten that. And that they had this idea, this synthesized concept of what it is that, in my opinion, it never was. So again, I'm not coming across here trying to bash on the OSR movement. I'm just trying to say is I don't think it is sometimes what it says it is, and I'd like to discuss it, particularly in the concept that smaller is better, because sometimes that's true and sometimes it isn't, and I'm not afraid to be wild and wacky today like I was wild and wacky then, so long as I'm doing it with a set of rules that are consistent and make me happy.